Welcome, everybody, to the inaugural broadcast of axisgba Countdown, your weekly highlight and update show. I'm Torf.0, your host, and I'll be joined by my guest host, mdoepker.
Hey everybody.
Now, earlier in the week, I was able to sit down with mdoepker and find out a little bit more about him and some of the nuances of axisgba. Play clip. Hey, thanks for joining me today, mdoepker.
Thanks for having me.
We'll start off nice and simple. Our first question in this interview will be, what's your favorite Pokemon and why?
That one is actually a little bit tough for me. I have a three-way tie between Heracross, Kingdra, and Espeon. Most of them are just like nostalgic reasons, but I love Espeon and like the elegance of it more than anything. But yeah, I'm definitely a Gen 2 fan, so that helps out.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, well then this question might be a little bit harder for you since you're a Gen 2 fan, but Pokemon Red or Pokemon Blue?
Low, if that counts.
Pokemon Yellow. Hey, that works for me. Okay, well, why don't you tell us a little about yourself and kind of your affiliation with Pokemon Access on Reddit?
Yeah, for sure. So mostly, I think it was in December. I was over in Europe, and then like a couple of days before I got back, I was just like browsing through Reddit, and I saw this post in our Pokemon for Pokemon Atlas, and I was like, that sounds pretty cool. So I just checked it out, and then I ended up spending the entire night planning out a team I was going to use for when I got home, and like stuff like that. So I did that. Unfortunately, I didn't really make a very good team because I was like super jet lagged and stuff like that. But I made the team, decided halfway through to just kind of quit, start working on the next. But yeah, the experience there was really cool because I got so many more battles and I grew as Adler a lot. And then I started watching PokeTubers again. I was really into that for Gen 5. And one of the newer big names right now is Shady Penguin on YouTube. And there was all these battles from his GBA posts and whatnot. So I thought, like, this is a really cool idea. I want to get involved in this, but it's not really available to people unless you're a YouTuber. Like, how can I get this done? So I opened it up to the Access community because at this point I was established leader, so I was a lot more involved in the community and realized that these people are here for Pokemon. Like, it's a good environment to try and get something set up like this. So I just kind of ran with it, and it's been taking off from there. So
Yeah, it really has. What were some of the difficulties you may have faced getting a mod team together for Access GBA here on Reddit and adapting the rule set from a singles non-draft format to kind of the draft format that we use here on Access GBA?
well, actually, I was really lucky with the mod team when I started advertising the idea of the fantasy draft league. Calm down, the other interviewee for this, posted right away and said, "Yeah, I'm really interested in this. Like, I'll help in whatever way I can." And I was like, "That's great. Like, because I'm gonna need more mods. Like, I can't do this by myself, obviously." And after that, Double Fried also offered, and he's been really big help too, just because he's able to monitor stuff at different times because he's from the EU as opposed to North America. And then Demon Gyro also. I think I'm saying that right, but I'm not actually positive. Yeah, so like they all have really different specialty areas too. Double Fried's been doing the CSS flares, Comdegram's been doing the CSS for the subreddit, and like they've all just been getting different stuff set up. So I've gotten real lucky with that part of it. In regards to the rule set, though, we kind of just adapted off of the Pokemon Access rule set because it is slightly different than Smogon. Well, actually, really different, but we adapted it slightly because the Access rule set is more geared towards everybody having the same accessibility to all Pokemon. Whereas this one, we're going into it knowing that people will not have the same access and they won't have the choice to have the same Pokemon. So it was definitely a challenge to decide on things like Smogon versus the access rules and other things like whether or not to include legendaries, what things need to be banned, stuff like that. But hopefully it works out really well in that regards.
Yeah, and we have a great moderating team here on Access GBA, and um, it's kind of our first season, so we'll see how this rule set goes, but it's something I'm definitely looking forward to. And now getting on to maybe the leagues in general, I see you're here in the Kanto League. Do you have any insight or any thoughts on how your league's going to shape out this year?
Well, looking at it, a lot of people say they're scared of Fava Poppy, but I think honestly I'll be able to handle him. I'm more scared because I know he's a good battler, but I know Dusty Buckets. You can look at his team and see he's got strong threats there. Aegislash, Azrael for the Belly Jet, Magnus for steel trapping, like all that stuff. But the Father Poppy has the nice sand team there too. Chow Time's got a really good team. Like we're definitely going to be getting some really good battles in here. That's for sure.
All right. Well, do you have any thoughts about how you performed during the draft and any closing thoughts about your team?
I don't think I actually did very well during the draft, mostly just because I had my eyes set on a rain team, and it's not that I didn't get that, but I didn't really think in regards to what other people were drafting, how to counter big threats and other things like that, which is definitely something to keep in mind for the next time this comes around if we're lucky enough to have a season two. But yeah, hopefully it does work out for me.
Yeah, well, it's a totally different strategy, but we're having a lot of fun with it. Okay, is there anything else that you'd like to add?
No, nothing really. Just yeah, keep posting the battles and that. Like we're going to have some good ones. Like it's gonna be fun, that's for sure.
Well, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to do an interview with me, mdoepker, and look forward to talking to you again in the future.
Yeah, no, for sure. Sure, we'll see each other on the IRC and whatnot.
All right, see you then.
So for the draft portion of the Access GBA League, we had all the coaches separate into four different conferences, each with eight coaches, and then they were each given a draft pick so that way they could select their teams. It started with one coach, went to the last coach, and then snaked back and forth until each coach had selected 10 Pokemon. Then a new draft was determined to select Mega Pokemon. This happened all between April 10th to April 13th, and it went actually really successfully. Almost all coaches were able to attend, so we didn't have much holdups, and each draft took about 2 to 3 hours, so it worked out really well. Once a Pokemon had been selected, the no other coach was able to draft it, so it was left off the block. So it was really interesting to see which Pokemon were overall really common to draft. Some of them were obvious ones, but other ones were kind of surprising.
Yeah, and I got here. It looks like kind of in line with Smogon statistics in our drafts. Rotom Wash was the most common Pokemon drafted overall. It actually went in the first round of each league's draft, so it was
Well,
pretty well the unanimous number one.
it was first draft in two of the leagues and second in the other two, so it was obviously a very popular Pokemon to grab. But it's kind of obvious though too, just because it's a very versatile Pokemon and fits into nearly every single team.
Mm-hmm. And kind of something interesting about since it's the format and each Pokemon's only drafted once per league, that you kind of saw some maybe more uncommon Pokemon reach the top. Just going off these statistics, it's like Gastrodon was actually taken in the third round on average, and is actually taken in the first round in one league. So a
Yeah,
Pokemon that's typically lower UU and Smogon is actually pretty high up on our list of drafted Pokemon.
yeah, I agree. Gastrodon was one that caught me off guard for sure. I'm the moderator of that conference, and another one from there was Zoroark, which was definitely an interesting pick to say the least.
Hmm. And for Megas, it looks like the only real consensus for Megas was Charizard Y. It was the only one that was taken in all four leagues. But you can also see some trends of the more popular ones. Garchomp was drafted out of three of the four. Pinsir was drafted out of three of the four. It was actually one of the higher ranked Megas that was taken, not in all the leagues. Um,
Another interesting thing, though, too, is even though Charizard Y was drafted in every single league, it still was only tied for fourth in the popularity based on where it was taken, because it was typically taken in 6th or 7th position, whereas things like Pinsir were always grabbed right at the beginning.
Yeah. Yep. Other than that, Venusaur was taken in 3 of the 4 leagues, but it was also taken fairly close to the bottom. But it's still a useful support Pokemon, even though it wasn't so highly ranked.
That's true. Also, Charizard Y has now been dropped from one of the conferences. I can't remember offhand which, but I believe that Mega Venusaur was picked up in its place.
Oh, so Venusaur might actually be in 4 out of 4, and Charizard Y is only out of 3 out of 4.
Yeah, but I'm not positive about that either. I'm double checking right now, actually. Actually, I think I was mistaken. Alakazam was picked up instead of Venusaur.
Oh, I see. Well,
Which was
Alakazam is probably regarded as one of the lower tier megas due to just how frail it is, and it also loses that magical ability, Magic Guard, that really gives it kind of a revenge killing niche with Magic Guard and Focus Sash. So it'll be interesting to see how Mega Alakazam plays out in the league that has him.
That's true. It's in Johto, which definitely has some tough competition there, especially with some of the other megas that were drafted.
Well, despite their low average draft order, I do expect Charizard Y and Venusaur to perform fairly well. And due to the format of the different drafts, you actually see a lot of good Pokemon that get drafted later. Just going off the top of my head here, seeing how some of them were taken, I feel like Heracross is going to be a big sleeper Pokemon in the Johto Conference. It was actually only taken in the 10th round overall by Demon Gyro, but he actually has some of its best counters in Talonflame, Togekiss, Florges, and Gyarados. So I can expect Heracross to be cleaning up a lot in that league and getting a lot of kills despite being drafted in the final round.
That's really true. Also, Scarf Moxie Heracross is always a threat, regardless of what counters and that it has. But obviously, the priority Brave Bird from Talonflame would pose a major threat, so it's lucky that he did get that in the beginning rounds.
Yeah, most definitely.
Another one that I was looking at too was in the Sinnoh Conference. Patata Salad, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, drafted Fraligator in the 6th round. Not so much that he has counters, common counters to it like Demon Gyro grabbed, but just his team is overall very defensive. So if his Feraligatr can get in there, grab a couple D dances, then it should be able to Aqua Jet and Crunch, Ice Fang all the way to victory.
Yeah, Feraligatr really benefits by having access to Dragon Dance, and with a limited amount of strong electric types and grass types, depending on which team he's playing, it's definitely going to help him in being able to get a boost up and hopefully sweep.
Exactly, and also he has very good walls on his team. Milotic, Gliscor for the electric attacks, Chansey's there, also in Snorlax, and he's got a good core with Infernape there to synergize well, assuming switching in his teammates.
hmm Now, one interesting implication of the rules of this league is that item clause is in effect, and if anyone's still not aware, item clause is only one Pokemon on your team can hold a specific item. So that only gives you 1 leftovers, 1 assault vest, 1 life orb, which brings some interesting implications. Like in Potato Salad's case, only one Pokemon can hold the leftovers, which means we can't just give it to Feraligatr and have him heal up his self a little bit after each substitute. So realistically, his Feraligatr is only going to be able to use sub 3 or 4 times. But on the same side of that coin, it's going to be the same on his opponents, which really also boosts the use of abilities like Frisk and skills like Knock Off, because you can knock off the leftovers, and now no one on his team is going to be able to get that passive bonus since that item's now gone.
But a good point to notice, though, is on Potato Salad's team, he did draft a lot of Pokemon that don't necessarily need to use leftovers. Milotic could use his leftovers, Gliscor, Toxic Orb, Chansey, Eviolite, and then there's three, a really strong core there that none of them are using the same item. So it'll definitely be interesting to see.
And with item clause being in effect, it's kind of like the VGC rule set, where you see items that you might not normally see on Smogon's OU ladder. You might see creative sets that use things like Lychee Berry or Salak Berry. You'll probably be able to see a lot of sets that are going to use the Citrus Berry for healing instead of your regular leftovers. Just
Another one that's slightly common too, I noticed from our Pokemon Access, is Muscle Band on Talonflame, just to power up those Brave Birds a little bit more and not to lock them into a move with choice.
hmm Yeah, definitely. And then you may see Pokemon that are running acrobatics more often because sometimes it's going to be just as useful not to have an item than it is to um, have it always be holding like a Sharp Beak for Talonflame or leftovers or even Assault Vest.
With Unburden, it needs to have held an item originally to get the speed boost. I'm not sure if that applies to Acrobatics' power boost as well.
Actually, acrobatics will receive the power boost regardless of whether the Pokemon was originally holding an item or not. And oh yeah, acrobatics and unburden will be a really powerful combo because if you say on Hawlucha, probably the best abuser of it, or Sceptile as well, with its access to unburden, you can run like a power herb for Sky Attack or a power herb for Solar Beam on Sceptile, and you can get that speed boost, and then you can get that boost to acrobatics as well. So basically, you're going to be at double speed, and you have a 110 flying move that you have at your disposal. Now, with another one of these rules being only one Pokemon per league, you see kind of a different strategy in team building. Now, when you're just building kind of a regular team, you have to account for every threat when you're building your team. But for this and your draft strategy, it kind of leads to interesting combinations because you don't exactly know yet what all your opponents are going to have. So it's kind of hard to get out of that mold of team building for, say, OU battles. Personally, I know a lot of times I was thinking, oh, I have to pack so and so Pokemon so I can cover for Heatran or I can cover for Latios. But then with this rule set, there can't, it's only Kalos native Pokemon, so there's no Heatran, there's no Latios. And another thing is, which kind of helped me in my draft, is that once Talonflame was gone, you knew that it was only going to be on one team. So Pokemon that are weak to flying, like fighting Pokemon, bug Pokemon, grass Pokemon, they're a lot more viable in this kind of metagame because they don't really stand the risk of being revenge killed. And if you're playing the one guy that does have Talonflame, you can always swap in a flying resist like Bisharp or Metagross and come out on a pretty good position. So it definitely has different implications in the strategy of team building.
Yeah, I know during the draft, a lot of people were also considering things that threaten their team. Like a lot of people mentioned for the people who had grabbed Aegislash that they thought about grabbing Malamar later on because it counters it so well, and just different thought processes that occurred during the draft itself.
Yeah, and you find yourself drafting a Pokemon like Malamar because typically it counters Aegislash so well. But even if some leagues, if it doesn't match up that way, you're still having Malamar only going to take on Aegislash once per season, so you maybe don't have to account for Malamar as often when you're drafting Aegislash. You don't have to pack a teammate that directly counters Malamar. So definitely different implications compared to Smogon OU, but so far it's been a lot of fun, and I look forward to seeing probably a lot of creative movesets and whatnot just on these two rules. And now, earlier in the week, I was able to secure an interview with another mod, Com Nagrom, and we'll go ahead and we'll play that now. I have Com Nagrom with me today. Thanks for coming on, Com.
Pleasure to be here.
All right, well, we'll start you off with an either easier question this interview. What's your favorite Pokemon and why is it?
Okay, wow, favorite Pokemon, big question. If I had to pick a favorite overall, I'd probably go with Arcanine. Honestly, because I love the lore surrounding Arcanine. I really like the whole, it's a legendary Pokemon, but not too legendary of a Pokemon.
Interesting choice and explanation. Awesome. Okay, well, let's get into your personal history a little bit. How long have you been playing competitive Pokemon?
I've been playing competitive Pokemon. Time-wise, I'm not 100% sure on. Probably a couple of years. But I've been playing since Diamond, Pearl, Platinum era. I've been really a big competitive battler. I got into it a lot at college, so I've basically been playing on and off with my friends competitively and on little tournaments here and there.
All right, well, now I have a big question for you. Pokemon Red or Pokemon Blue?
This is another tough one. I mean, Pokemon Blue was probably like my entire childhood. It was the very first Pokemon game I ever played. I didn't play Pokemon Red until maybe a couple of years ago.
I like that answer. Okay. Well, let's tell everyone a little bit about yourself and your affiliation with our Pokemon Access and kind of how you joined that subreddit.
Our Pokemon Axis was kind of random. I happened upon it because they put an advertisement on our Pokemon, and they had like a little like battle video, and I was like, that sounds like an interesting idea. So this second season of Pokemon Axis was my first season. I had never played in it before at all, but I found the atmosphere and the activity of the community a lot more than any other community I'd ever been a part of in the past.
Oh, I see. Well, on the topic of Access GBA, then how did mdoepker approach you about this idea?
It was kind of random. We were kind of messing around in the IRC chat one day, and he decided that after watching a couple of videos on YouTube of I forget his name, Magnitude M4G, whatever his name is, he approached me about maybe making some kind of interesting, like, sister league to go alongside Pokemon Access. And the what he came up with was the Global Battle Association, or the GBA as we've been calling it. And he has plans for it for the future, but for the most part, we're sticking with what we got right now to make sure it'll work.
I see. Well, what were your thoughts on the idea initially, and how have you and the other mods gone about being able to implement it into a usable state where we've been able to enjoy it?
Well, it's been a really long thought process. It started off as just a very small idea. We posted it as like, hey, would anyone be interested in this? As just a small thread on Pokemon Access. And when we first posted it, we didn't honestly think a lot of people would be super interested in it. In fact, the feedback was almost minuscule. We had maybe 3-4 people max show any kind of interest. When we talk about an IRC, a couple more people would approach us. And at first, we didn't think we would even have close to enough people. When we first opened up the sign-ups to Pokemon Access, we had, for maybe 3 days, a total of maybe 6-7 people sign up. And then, slowly but surely, we had more people trickle in for Pokemon Access. And then, when we opened it up to our Stunfisk and our Pokemon, it's just those last like 4 slots filled up in hours.
Yeah, that's how I heard about it, was through the R Stunfisk post, and I've been watching Steve for a while, so I'd already been familiar with the concept of GBA, so I was very intrigued when I first saw it, and I was going to sign up right away, and so far I've enjoyed it, even though we're only in the preseason. Now looking through these rosters, I see you're here in the Hoenn League. Do you have any insight about how the league's going to be this year, and maybe your thoughts about your team?
I'm pretty confident in my team. Originally, my original plan had nothing to do with a Sandstorm team at all. In fact, I was originally just going to draft a whole bunch of, like, UU, NU Pokemon that I really liked. I was going to grab Arcanine and Absol and a bunch of just random Pokemon that I really liked that I wanted to breed up. But I decided against it because I saw like a lot of people who had signed up were like super hyper competitive people. And I didn't want to get paired with somebody who was super hyper competitive and have my team of UU and U Pokemon crushed every single match. I'd rather not end up in the bottom 4. But after drafting my team the way I did it, I feel pretty confident in my team. Probably right now, my biggest concern would probably be with Zinsum, because his team's looking a little dangerous.
Yeah, definitely. Well, best of luck there in the Hoenn Conference. Do you have any last words to give us before we sign off here?
Just hope everyone really has a lot of fun with this. Me, Mdo, and Demon and Double Fried have had a lot of fun organizing all this, and we really, really hope everyone enjoys it as much as we have.
All right. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to interview with me today, and I look forward to battling you and seeing you in the future. Thanks.
Oh, no problem.
And now we'll move on to our top 10 countdown. Now, normally we'd be counting down the top 10 plays of the week, but since this is the first week of the preseason and we don't have any battle videos yet, we'll be counting down the 10 most popular Pokemon according to their draft statistics. The number 10 most popular Pokemon in these drafts was Garchomp. The Landshark Dragon has arguably the best 2 stabs of the game, so he should do pretty successful this season and rack up a lot of kills.
Azumarill came in at number 9 on our popular Pokemon draft list. The Aqua Rabbit was drafted twice in the first round as well as twice in the third round. Having a nice water fairy typing allows it to hit hard on a lot of things, as well as being able to run a belly jet set or a hard-hitting choice band set.
Number 8 on this list was Dragonite, the classic dragon Pokemon, and he's as good in this gen as he has ever been. With the new item weakness policy, giving him a real buff with his multi-scale ability, he'll be a powerful setup sweeper, being able to utilize +3 attack and +1 speed.
Number 7 on our list was Talonflame. Not much of a surprise here. This Scorching Pokemon was hot on our coach's list as well. Gale Winds helps out a lot with this Pokemon as it's able to have priority Brave Birds, which, whether it's running Choice Band or Leftovers, it's going to be hitting hard.
Number 6 on this list is Ferrothorn. Ferrothorn's arguably the best hazard layer in the game, and in a Kalos native meta like this one, it easily cements itself as a top pick.
Now coming in at number 5 is Aegislash. This one was a little low in my opinion. Having such a great ability as well as a really good typing, I feel like it should have been drafted higher as it's super versatile and it should be able to run a multitude of different sets and fit into almost any team really.
4th on this list is Tyranitar. By going 4th overall on average, Tyranitar proves that despite the massive nerf that Weather received in Generation 6, that Weather isn't dead yet. Of course, being a pseudo-legendary with 600 base stat total helps too.
And number 3 on our list is Greninja. Once again, a little shocked with this one. I thought it should have been a lot lower in the draft, and it has dropped off considerably since the preseason has started. But Protein does help it out a lot, always having Stab. It can also use it for some different benefits, like using spikes to avoid an electric attack or anything like that. So it really is a strong Pokemon. A little frail, but it seems to do okay.
And the runner-up for most popular was Scizor. Scizor hasn't followed too much since its Diamond Pearl Platinum days where it dominated number 1 for the ladder. It rounds out our average at pick number 2.
And our number 1 top-picked Pokemon for the first season of axisgba was obviously Rotom Wash. Like I said earlier, it's a really nice Pokemon with a great typing and ability that allow it to fit on almost any team. Yeah, it really copied Smogon's stats here because that one was not shocking at all.
Well, that's been our program. Thanks for joining me, mdoepker.
And thank you for having me today.
We'll do it all again next week. You viewers at home, make sure that you send me some replays of your exhibition matches this week, as they'll be some of our topics for our next week's show. I hope you enjoyed our first episode. If you have any comments, if you have any suggestions, or if you can help either in graphics or you think that you'd want to be a guest host, please leave a comment in the Reddit thread that we're going to post for this. Thank you and good night.